What if I told you your ability to create an imaginary friend when you were a kid could be the main skill you need to heal from traumatic memories? Would you believe me? My name is Daniel, and I'm a professional therapist and hobby baker. And today we're talking about the power of imagination in healing trauma while making a cinnamon banana walnut sourdough loaf. Hillary McBride has a podcast called Other People's Problems, where we get to sit in and listen to actual therapy sessions with the client's permission. There's an episode where a client becomes activated and is recalling a traumatic event that happened at a party. She shares some of the details of feeling trapped and alone, with no one at the party to help her, especially those she thought should have helped her. She even mentions the memory surprises her because she had stuffed it down as a trauma response. As she continues recalling some of the details, the therapist Hillary McBride asks her to imagine herself at the end getting out of the party safely. She asks the client to imagine walking down the steps, leaving out the gate, getting in her car, and driving away. The client first protests and says, but she didn't get out. She wasn't able to make it safely. Still, Hillary asks her to imagine that she did. The client is able to imagine the process and de-escalate and come down from the intense experience. She mentions she's surprised to almost feel better. The power of her imagination helped change or alter this memory in a way that her brain was able to consolidate it as something that happened in the past is over, and she's safe now, something she couldn't do prior to this. Or author of It's Not Always Depression, Hillary Jacobs Hendel, talks about a story of working with a client who is overwhelmed by a memory of his childhood abuse. And in this memory, she instructs him to imagine himself now going back and seeing that young kid, that young version of himself, and grabbing him by the hand and taking him out of the basement into a safe place at a neighbor's house across the street. The client is able to do so through this imaginary exercise, and again, similar to the other story we talked about, feels a sense of relief. What happened? How does that work? In an experience of trauma, our brains often get overloaded and overwhelmed and cannot go through the process of consolidating a memory properly. There are aspects of our memory that are implicit, meaning we are not fully aware of them, but they are happening, such as body sensations, sensory cues, and emotion states in that moment. And there are explicit aspects, meaning things we can recall that a person said or what happened next. In trauma, the brain has a hard time consolidating all of these aspects together as one memory. So each piece becomes fragmented, and our brain does not know that the trauma event is over and we are safe. Each of these fragments, whether that be something we see or smell or an internal feeling, etc., could then trigger a trauma response. And in that response, our brain once again cannot grasp that it is over and we are safe. The unfortunate part is these memory traces can add on top of each other and compound to make something even more negative. A less intense example of memory traces might be a song that you shared with your boyfriend or girlfriend that may be painful to hear after a not-so-amicable breakup. Then each time you hear the song after that, it becomes compounded with negative feelings from the last times you heard the song, and were reminded of the difficult breakup and the negative experiences of hearing the song after. Similarly, trauma responses being so intense can add on to the sense of overwhelm from the original traumatic memory. Not only was this event traumatizing once, it was traumatizing again when I was triggered in the grocery store or at my kid's soccer game, etc. However, the imagination is powerful because we can go back and use our imagination to heal and bring closure to certain memories. See, every time we recall a memory, we slightly alter some of the details without knowing it. This could be as simple as we summarize something someone said, or how we perceived what the meaning of it was, rather than recalling it word for word. Or we may combine aspects from multiple memories and mix up small details. Now, this is not necessarily fully negative, as the idea of altering memories when recalling them can be useful in healing trauma. In the first example I started with, that is what happened. The client was able to recall the memory and use her imagination to alter the ending, bringing it to a place of closure that her brain could now code that memory as over and done, and she is now safe. The power of your imagination is wild. A classic study showed a team-wide improvement for free throw percentages by spending time imagining shooting free throws, not even practicing, just imagining. There are other stories of improved performance, such as Kobe Bryant running through plays and putting up shots by himself for a long period of time without using a ball, but just imagining it happen. Imagination and visualization has been shown to help reduce fear in childbirth, which then reduces tearing. We can also use our imagination to go back and heal younger memories of relational trauma. As I mentioned in the attachment video, our primary drive when we are in distress is to connect and belong. So emotional abandonment or isolation is inherently traumatic. I work with clients that have memories of feeling isolated because their home life was chaotic and they felt shame about it with no one to process with, or they could not go to anyone for support or comfort. Walking them through imagining themselves now, their current self, going back and speaking to that younger self and offering whatever it is that younger self in the memory needed, whether that be validation, comfort, or even just a hug, often leaves them feeling less shame or fear in that memory. They're able to imagine connecting with that younger self in key moments and reprocess that memory with a sense of control, confidence, and competence. For those who are religious, it may also be beneficial or helpful to imagine Jesus or whoever they see as God or higher power coming back with them to those younger memories and offering a divine sense of comfort or care, or just showing where they believed God or whoever to be in that moment. The imagination exercise helps alter the memory to include this sense of healing. It isn't just a memory involving fear anymore, that as a child, someone didn't know what mood their alcoholic parent would be in when they returned home. It's now a memory that also involves a sense of healing and safety from the imaginary exercise of walking that younger self up to the room and telling them, this isn't right or okay, but eventually they'll be able to get through this. Working with traumatic memories and trauma can be intense work, so it may be wise to work through some of these experiences with the help of a trained therapist. But I just want to affirm that you have the resources you need to heal. Your body and your mind were designed to find healing when needed. And you probably developed these skills when you were a young kid, learning to play with your imaginary friend. Now, if you're looking for a therapist, I know the process can be overwhelming. There are websites where therapists share what their particular trainings are in, and you might see acronyms like EMDR, DBT, CBT, AEDP. It can be a little bit overwhelming of what all does this mean, and what do I need for what I'm looking for. So if that's you and you're looking for a therapist that might be able to help you work through some of this trauma, or maybe work through intrusive thoughts or anxiety or depression, keep an eye out for my next video where I'll break down a little bit what some of these trainings are and what might be a match for your particular needs. Thanks for watching. See you next time.